All right. The doors are swinging open and the folks are coming in. But with that, I think we will get things moving and perhaps a few others will join us as we go. So, folks, um, it's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I had the interesting experience, as I imagine at least a few of you did, of watching the vice presidential debate last night. And I have to admit, I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, however you may have scored the debate, I think that Brave Angels folks at least can generally agree that the Democratic and the Republican nominees for vice president were generally not only thoughtful, not only civil, but even respectful and friendly towards one another. And that was a remarkable thing because it almost felt like an echo of some bygone period of American history where civility was the norm of our politics and not sadly a deviation from what we have from what we have all come to expect. Nevertheless, we are here in a moment in American life where, although this was the case perhaps 4 years ago around this time, it continues to be the case at this moment where it feels as if we are on a roller coaster of sorts that is racing towards the bottom in terms of the trust that the American people have in the major parties, in so many of our primary civic institutions, and sadly in each other across this partisan divide in the midst of this culture war. And in that context, I want to reaffirm the significance, the deep importance of our even committing to the act of being here together on a call like this tonight. If ever you feel that the work of Braver Angels is merely recreational or sort of spinning your wheels in a pleasant way, please allow me to insist to you that what we are doing is more significant than that. This is a country that is going to need to find a pathway towards a deeper reconciliation as the wounds of our present politics one day begin to heal. And as we embark upon that course of reconciliation, how can we get there if no Americans have taken the time to lay the groundwork for the American people, their elected officials, and their institutions to begin working together in a spirit of good faith again, one that's worthy of the moral promise of this country? Well, that is what we seek to do. That's the ground we seek to till. And that's the space I think we occupy in the civic life of American society. And each and every one of you is a part of that. And I think for myself, I'm honored to be in that company with you. Now, as far as the focus of today's events, tonight's events, our events is concerned, we are looking at in just a few weeks' time, the 2024 presidential election. And as a part of our overarching American Hope campaign, Election Week will be a week in which Braver Angels plays host to some impactful online gatherings that we intend to serve as both a place of refuge from what is potentially going to be the massive toxicity of election night, the deep uncertainty of election night, but that will also be meant to inspire people with a sense of hope with respect to the larger movement that we are building, and to plug them into the social infrastructure of Braver Angels work in a way that equips hopefully a good number of new Braver Angels members to be able to go out into the field, as it were, and to advance this work in their own communities, online, and in whatever institutions they may be active in. And so the events that we are planning are aimed at community gathering, community building, I should say, getting the message out, and also highlighting the incredible work that's going on in the Braver Angels field across America, particularly surrounding Election Day. And to hear a little bit more about those efforts, I want to turn things over to my colleagues Mark Metzger and then Gabriella Timmis. Starting with you, Mark, and Mark oversees the larger body of Braver Angels artistic programming, actually. He's our newly minted director of the arts. But Mark is a formidable organizer to whom we all are grateful for having played such an extraordinary leadership role in producing the most recent two Braver Angels conventions. And so, if anybody's unaware of Mark's pivotal role in those gatherings, I'd like you to be aware of that now. But Mark, please take a few minutes and tell us what we can look forward to come election week.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John, and thank you for the kind words. It was very, very thoughtful. Well, Braver Angels members, we are, the time is nigh for the 2024 election and our place in it. And so we've been cooking up a lot of ideas for ways in which we're going to engage with the election this year. Of course, we have the effort on election day of encouraging red blue pairs to go to the polls. Gabby will talk about that more in just a moment. But we're also building out ways in which there are other programs going on in which we can gather. On the day of the election, and you heard it here first, folks, we haven't announced this to anyone yet, but on the day of the election, we're going to have an evening event online that is going to really showcase the breadth and scope of the grassroots movement at Braver Angels. So we're going to be calling in various people, various leaders within Braver Angels with where they're at on election day, whether that's at the polls or whether that's at a Braver Angels gathering or whether that's being at home on the couch watching the results come in with their mom. And so we're going to be calling in a lot of people to see how people are engaging with the day, reflecting on the work that they do at Braver Angels, and really showcasing where our leaders are at all over the country and the different kinds of work that people do. On the night after the election, we're going to have another program that is really dedicated to reflecting on the current state of the moment. Obviously, there's no way to know what that moment will be. We won't know if or when or who will have won the election at that time. We're whatever state that the election is in is how we're going to reflect on it. But we're dedicating 24 hours after the election to take a moment to have everyone come together to reflect on this. And we're bringing in some very notable leaders who are involved with Braver Angels to be reflecting on this. And so it's going to be a really, I think it's going to be a pivotal moment within Braver Angels to hear from these people in this moment. So we hope you can be there for both of those things. But on top of that, we're also going to do other programs in the week leading up to the election. For example, there's a documentary film that was made this past summer in which Braver Angels is a real central figure. And our convention is featured in a big section. Our members are interviewed. It's really wonderful. And so we're going to be screening that documentary during election week online for all the members to watch. And it'll have, pretty much just been made available to us. So we'll all be watching it together for the first time in a lot of ways, which is exciting. And other stuff that we're working out, possibly some debates, possibly some other stuff. Keep an eye on your emails in the coming week or two, and we're going to have lots of announcements about things coming up. But the point is, as John said, is we're really looking for ways in which we can gather as a community as best as we can in these moments and showcase what we're all about here at Braver Angels. So yeah, there's lots of exciting stuff later this month, and we hope you can join us for a lot of it and help be leaders in a lot of it. A lot of this is going to be, we're going to need people to, like if we're going to have gatherings and alliances, some kind of like watch party or going to the polls, that's stuff that volunteers will really need to be taking up. So if, as much as you're able to support our community in this moment, the better. So thank you. I'm going to pause there before I just keep rambling forever.
No, that was perfect. Thank you very much, Mark. And we're going to go to Braver Angels Director of Communications, Gabbi Timmis, in just a moment. I do want to tell folks that we're probably going to talk a little bit. Well, we're probably going to talk for about 7 or 8 more minutes in terms of laying out some of the work we're doing or less. But I want to take the bulk of this meeting to hear from each of you any questions that you may have related to the specific election-oriented initiatives. Not just yet, Ted, but when we finish this opening segment here. But any questions that you have related to the topic under discussion here, but also to hear from you just about your general feelings and concerns related to the election itself, and perhaps the larger work of bridging the divide between the American people. So I really do want this to be an open discussion as we open up the floor. But before we get to that, I'd like to turn things over to my much esteemed, very gifted, and very valued colleague and friend, Gabbi Timmis, to tell us a little bit about what we will actually be doing on the ground on Election Day and how that links in to the suite of events that Mark was describing. Gabbi.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you, John, and thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. It is such a pleasure to be with you all. This is one of my favorite parts of my job, is just to get and see the members of Brave Angels and their faces. So I'm excited to be with you all. So Mark gave you all the sneak preview on what we have to come this election, which is really exciting. You guys heard it here first, so you'll see it more in the newsletters, but you got the first inside scoop on what Braver Angels is really planning for election week. But if you've been to the National Field Call, if you've read our newsletters, you might have seen that we've already rolled out our Election Day initiative, and we'd love more folks to get involved. I think some of you on this call might already be involved, and that's wonderful. So I'm going to just take a minute or two. I know some folks are already familiar, but for anyone who's not, I'll just briefly introduce you to what we're doing on Election Day and how you can get involved. So here is my little slideshow. Here you'll see my wonderful dad and I. If you were at our convention this summer, you saw us speak about this initiative that we'll be doing on Election Day. He and I will be doing it together in Michigan. I'm really excited and looking forward to it. And so he and I, as a red-blue pair, will be heading to the polls in Michigan to show voters on the ground that no matter who we're voting for, we can and we must get along. So we're going to be a father-daughter pair, giving hope to all father-daughter red-blue pairs across the country on that day. Okay, so here we are. I think Yvonne shared the link there, braverangels.org/election day. So if you're interested in getting involved, if you're interested in getting your friends and family involved, send them that link, braverangels.org/election day. It gives them some information about what we're doing. It also has a link to our sign up, which we can also share in the chat here if you'd like to just directly sign up yourself. Once you sign up, you'll be sent our Election Day toolkit. It is pretty much encompasses everything you need to know about getting involved on Election Day. So it talks about the legal guidelines for what to consider. It talks about materials, messaging, media outreach. Everything you need to know is included in that toolkit, which will be emailed directly to you as soon as you sign up. Another thing that will be sent directly to you is a link to a weekly informational session. So every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern, I do weekly informational sessions with folks who are interested in this Election Day initiative, answer any and all questions, go through the toolkit in depth with folks. So I'm there as a resource every week. For folks who have an idea, have a partner, maybe your dad, maybe your son, maybe a friend in your life that you'd like to do this initiative with. If you have a partner, once you've signed up and you get the Election Day toolkit, you are good to go. Full steam ahead. You and your partner can figure out your polling place and what time you want to go, all of that. But you have everything you need to know to be successful. If you don't have a partner and you'd like to sign up, we're going to work on matching you. So I can talk a bit about that. So here, just for folks who haven't had a chance to see it, this is what the Election Day toolkit looks like. So it's just a Google Drive with a bunch of folders, but there's a lot of really wonderful content in there. And if you come to the weekly informational session, I go through everything with you and answer any and all questions. So definitely come check that out. So that will be emailed to you once you sign up. And so just to see as a status update of where we're at. So we have 292 signups across 42 different states, which is really, really wonderful. We're really excited about the amount of enthusiasm we have around this initiative. The one thing I will say, though, is 200 of those signups are blue. So we're looking for more reds and more others to get engaged in this activity. So I've been doing a lot of targeted local outreach to folks looking for some red and other pairs for blues across the country. So if you're signed up and you don't have your pair yet, just know that we're working on it. But also, if you are a red or an other and you're interested and you see, folks in your area that are signed up, please do sign up. We would love to have you involved. It will be really wonderful. So we're excited for this. And just last thing I'll mention is that on election day and that event, we'll be spotlighting a few folks doing this initiative. And the night after the election, prior to the night after election convening, the folks who did this initiative will all gather together and we'll all talk about our experiences. So it's really cool. It's a really wonderful group of people. It's been fun to get to know the people who will be doing this. It's really a pilot. Braver Angels has never done something like this before. So if you want to get on the ground and do something, Braver Angels has never done, I don't think anyone's ever done this type of red blue pair initiative. Please get involved. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you. That's it for election day. But just to say, if you're wondering coming out of this meeting, what's my next step? This is your next step. Sign up and get involved. So thanks, everyone.
There you go. Thank you very much, Gabby. And Mark, I know that you have to go. I'm going to throw a quick pass to Mr. Metzger. Oh, is he still? Oh, yeah, there he is. I'm going to just throw a quick pass to Mark. Mark, is there anything else you want to say before you leave us with respect to the release of the documentary or anything else?
Yeah, so there's going to be an email going out to volunteer leaders tomorrow. So many of you are going to receive this email. I'll let you know the details now. With the documentary, we have the opportunity to screen the film. We have permission to screen the film from October 22nd to November 5th for free, which is a very generous offer from the filmmaker. So we're encouraging alliances to set up screenings during that window of time while we can. So regarding the release of the documentary and how we're going to screen it, so we're encouraging people to do it in their own communities, but we're also going to do some online screenings, as I mentioned. At least one of those will be during this election week time. I don't have dates or times yet for that specifically, but keep your eyes on your emails because all of this is going to be announced going forward. After November 5th, after Election Day, it's all TBD on what kind of access we'll have to the documentary and how it'll be released. So, we definitely encourage, if you want to see the documentary, that window of time is when we want to do it. So, also, I saw a question from Susan about, is there time set for the election night event? Not yet. Tentatively, it's going to be early evening on the West Coast and later in the evening on the East Coast. But again, keep your eyes peeled for your emails. And it's going to be a 90-minute event, so it won't be too long.
Okay. Outstanding. Well, Mark, thank you very much, my friend. I know that you've got to take off, but really appreciate you helping to set the stage here for us tonight and everything else that you're doing, Mark. Just thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, John. And thank you all for being here. I appreciate the good work that you all are doing. And it's going to be an exciting election season, I think, and for a variety of reasons. So
that's one word for it.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everyone.
No. Take care, Mark. Okay, outstanding. I see that we're getting questions popping up in the chat. I haven't looked at them, but we'll take a look in a second. But I wanted to say, folks, if you want to ask a question, you can ask it in the chat, I suppose. But it'll be great to be able to hear your voices and to call on your raised hands. And so, if everybody knows how to raise their Zoom hand, you should have a button that says "Raise Hand" at your toolbar at the bottom. If anybody can't find that, send a message or just wave your real hands around like you need help, and we'll make sure you get it. Okay, so questions, comments, and thoughts about what we talked about today, or about the sort of larger thoughts about the election we're heading into, starting with Ted Borak. And Ted, tell us where you're calling in from, and if you're a part of a local alliance, mention that as well. That goes for everybody.
Yeah, I've been an ambassador for probably 3 years at least. We moved from Tucson, Arizona to Lancaster, PA. I am a part of the local alliance and have done a couple programs with them.
Mm.
And I thought Gabriella did a fabulous job last night. I was on the program there about the pairs to polls. But here's my question, and that is, there seems to be an awful lot of effort going into election day. I think one of the biggest things we're going to have to confront is after election
Yeah.
and what's going to happen, because I believe the country is going to be extraordinarily divided after the election, no matter which side is successful.
Hmm.
And I think that that is really the important point or place that Brave Angels has to have programs available to bring people together. And
Right.
I'll just say, what are you doing? And if you're
Hmm.
not, I urge that you put I can't imagine you haven't thought about that. I mean, Brave Angels started after the 2016 election. We understand that, but a replication of something like that, I don't know what it's going to be, but I think we need some discussion and training of people, even those that go out to the Pairs at the Polls program, about what is going to be done in the future, after the election day, what kind of programs BA will have out there to address the concerns of people then.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that question, Ted. And I'm happy to take a couple of minutes to speak to that. You're right. We are thinking about this. And we are in the midst of some strategic deliberations seeking to answer the question, how can braver angels be most effectively helpful in helping to preserve social cohesion across the divide in the aftermath of the election, given the fact that regardless of whether or not we have a Trump victory, a Harris victory, or, which is the third scenario, which is also very likely, that we simply don't really know who the winner is for some somewhat extended period of time. Any of those three scenarios could result in, and perhaps is even likely to result in a contesting of the results as we saw in 2020, or possibly some substantial unrest in American communities, such as we saw a bit of in 2016, protesters blocking freeways and so on and so forth. Um, I think that we are all in a mode of anticipation here, having a sense of what some of the possibilities are. But of course, none of us really knows for certain. And so what we've been trying to think through internally is, well, given scenario A, what is an appropriate sort of response for braver angels to take within the limits of our resources and our capacity, right? And so I can only speak to this in broad terms because we have not formalized strategic decisions on this front. But again, the strategic conversations and the uh, and the and the tentative planning stages are earnestly in motion. And what I'll say is that in our internal conversations, I think we've really been sort of anticipating sort of the possibility of two categorical scenarios. One scenario being the potential of actual violent unrest, just to put it bluntly, in certain American communities. And then the other scenario is more in the direction of controversy over the legitimacy of the outcome that might sort of pivot upon people having radically different empirical understandings of what we just witnessed, what we just happened, um, reminiscent of the claims of fraud, whether you agree with them or disagree with them. These tore apart American communities from Georgia to Arizona in 2020. And so in the former scenario, we've been thinking in terms of what can braver angels do to be a force for peace, essentially, in communities that might be facing upheaval, where we also have some organizing strength, right? So that's the first prerequisite. Braver Angels is not equally developed in every community by a long shot. And we're not in, there are many communities we're not in at all, so we're limited. But the strategic question becomes, how can we establish a center of gravity that brings people together when everything else is trying to tear them apart and perhaps even in physically destructive terms? So that's sort of scenario one. And then scenario two, if there is active controversy surrounding the outcome of the election, how can Braver Angels work with its existing toolkit to provide an outlet and platform and context for people to give voice to their frustrations, to give voice even to their suspicions, to sort of have it out constructively, sort of debating back and forth on what just happened. How can we give people an outlet for that emotion and that political energy that also ultimately reinforces their bonds as Americans and their commitments to hold America together as neighbors across the divide? And so you will be hearing more about the results of those internal deliberations, Ted and everybody else, in the days and weeks to come. But this does represent a bit of a leap forward for Brave Angels in terms of, I think, our determination to be a force for peace and reconciliation on the ground in the midst of an active situation, potentially anyway. And so we are certainly thinking it through.
John, can I jump in super quickly on that, just to emphasize
yes,
a few points made? Just to kind of frame it up, and this is how I'm thinking about it, Ted. So the election day, or election, so we have the election day initiative, and then we have the election night event. And so the election night event is really where are we now? We did a similar type event in 2020. Then we have the election night after event, which is like kind of the where are we going event. And again, we had a similar follow-up event in 2020. But just to be very explicit about something that John just spoke about and mentioned, we have a team that's like an election. It's essentially an election crisis planning team that John is a part of, and the other leaders within Brave Angels are a part of. And it's just this thinking through, there's like, in my mind, the way I'm thinking about it is there's almost like an invisible third event that we don't quite know what it is yet, because we don't quite know what the circumstance is going to call for yet. But just to say, we have a team that's kind of, as John just went through and explained, planning for what are all the different threads that could happen, and how do we as Brave Angels respond to each of them. So just to say, we have our two concrete events because we know the election is going to happen, and we know the next election night is going to happen, and we're going to have to make sense of both. But there's almost, at least in my mind, and again, it's really going to be determined based on what ends up happening, this kind of an invisible third event or third initiative, just depending on how we are going to respond following the election. So just wanted to kind of emphasize that because that's how I'm thinking about it, if that gives you some clarity as well.
And I'm just taking a peek at Ted's comment here in chat. You said, one thought I have is a template of comments and discussion points that pairs at polls could have to discuss with voters. Brave Angels has a good track record of post-election workshops, 2016. What can be replicated? Yes. So now, of course, day after the election is day after the election. The pairs at the polling places will have, I think, language that they're working at. But I like the idea of a discussion template. As a matter of fact, one leg of consideration here, Ted, is possibly providing tools for the general membership with respect to sort of scripts and language that they might be able to use to call in to talk radio shows, to write to letters to the editors, and to somehow mobilize our general volunteer and even member base to be active participants in the conversation across the divide, speaking up in favor of preserving the union, goodness gracious, preserving the cohesion of the republic in the aftermath. And so, yes, on the one hand, we are limited in our concentrated organizing strength with respect to individual American communities. We want to lean into what strength we have potentially, but there has to be ways in which each and every Brave Angels member can be involved, even if you're not in a community with a particularly well-developed alliance, let's say. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Okay, let's go now to Alex Weissenfalls. Alex, how are you doing, my friend?
Oh, doing all right. How are you, John?
I'm well. It's good to see you.
You too. So what I think Ted and I might actually be on the same page about this, because what occurs to me is inspiring mutual respect and helping people focus on our commitment to a peaceful and united democracy and good neighborliness. That to me looks like we're treating the symptoms of political division, but there's still that underlying fear and tension ready to manifest when people's patience gets fatigued. And so to address the root cause, I'm thinking that I'd like to see if we can lower the stakes of the election by helping people find ways to address each other's fears in or outside of the political arena, because that's what I've been working on. So is that something that Braver Angels is also looking to do?
Gabby, I see that you've come off mute. Do you want to jump on that first?
Yeah, I'll just say one thing that comes to mind. And John, if there's anything you want to add,
Sure.
please, of course, feel free. But just to say, it's a great point about really getting to the heart of folks' fears. One thing I'll just mention is that a couple weeks ago, our wonderful organizing team put together a really great program that included 3 different fishbowls. So it was a fishbowl conversation. So it's folks who all agree. So it's and actually one of our panelists is here tonight, Susan Rico. And so it was a fishbowl of Harris voters, a fishbowl of Trump voters, and a fishbowl of folks who weren't voting for Trump or Harris. And so just to respond to that point about the fears, it was one of my favorite Brave Angels programming I've ever seen. I know Casey agreed. It was a really wonderful program. And it really did get to the heart of a lot of what you're saying, because it gives folks an opportunity who totally disagree and think differently to explain calmly and rationally why they're voting for who they're voting for, or why they're not voting for either person. And so I think to the degree that we can, and as much as we can, really giving folks an opportunity to speak for themselves and to shine as individuals and say, this is why I'm voting for this person, or this is why I'm not voting at all. And giving, spectators an opportunity to hear from folks and really take that in and respond to that themselves. So I'll just plug that program because I thought it was really great, and it really spoke to reducing fears about the others. But always more to do in that arena. But I did just want to plug that quickly.
Yeah, and Alex, you actually said something which I think almost precisely echoes some of the language we've been using internally, which is how do you give people the tools to be able to speak to each other's fears, right? I think that you do hit the nail right on the head in that. And of course, look, I mean, ultimately, even if we give the American people some tools and context for them to be able to engage each other in good faith, it would be hard for a Trump voter to fully assuage somebody who's afraid of Donald Trump and the Trump and the MAGA movement of their fears with respect to Trump himself, right? And same thing going the other way. But at the very least, we can demonstrate that there are Americans on the other side of the divide who are taking their neighbors' fears and concerns seriously. And so, Braver Angels we sort of have a twin mandate. On the one hand, we want to rehabilitate the relationship of the American people, between the American people and their institutions, and then between the American people and each other. But in our case, I think that the former is more contingent upon the latter, insofar as we want the American people to be able to work together, understand each other, and trust each other in the context of our democratic society, so that Democrat and Republican and independent and third party, that we can work together across these divides to speak with one voice to our institutions and our elected leaders with respect to the type of politics that we want to see and the type of politics that could make our institutions and our leadership worthy of trust to us again, right? And so, we are focused in that way on fixing the interpersonal rift, and on that level, at least, I think we have something immediately to offer in those places where we can muster a response to communities who may feel like they're on the verge of losing trust in each other. Going next now, thank you, Alex. Thank you very much. Going next now to she may be in the midst of a conversation in the kitchen, it looks like, but Erica, if you are available, feel free to jump in with a question or comment.
Sorry, it's dinner time around here. I apologize. Question about the documentary. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? And is there a way that volunteers could view it first before we kind of decide if we want to screen it, or in what context would be good to screen it, or so forth?
Mm-hmm. Gabby, do you want to speak to this question?
Sure. And actually, Casey, if you want to jump in at any point, please feel free to.
Mm.
But I'll give a basic gist of the documentary, and please fill the gaps that I missed. But so just to say, Joseph Sim, who's an incredible documentarian, filmmaker, he was actually at the convention. You might have seen him. He traveled the country talking to strangers about what happened, what brought us apart from each other, why are we divided, what brought us to be taken apart from one another, and then what can bring us back together. And so he came to all different parts of the United States. He stopped in New York City. I had a really wonderful chat with him. John, I think did he stop in LA? Were you able to be interviewed by Joseph
I
as
was
well?
not able to see him in LA, but I had a wonderful interview with him in Kenosha.
Got
So
it.
I
Okay.
did see him there. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so yeah, so he was in Kenosha, he was at the convention, so he got really wonderful footage of the convention. He came to New York City. I talked about Braver Angels here in New York City. He talked to different leaders within Braver Angels, Barbara Thomas, David Blankenhorn, plenty participants at the convention. So and so he really was focused on answering that question. And from what I understand, and I don't want to speak for him or make any too many promises, Casey, you might know, but as Mark said, Brave Angels is a part of the whole story of America and what can bring us together, how we can really find each other again. And Casey, let me know what else can we say about the documentary?
I think you hit on most of it. He drove from the West Coast to the East Coast within a matter of days, talking to experts, strangers on the street, anybody he could. He was either driving, sleeping, interviewing, or eating at every given moment. And I have seen some clips of it, and he is extraordinarily talented. And he's had some great opportunities, and it's turning into a fantastic documentary. It's going to include Braver Politics, Braver Angels, and a few other of our sister organizations who are also working on depolarizing. I think it's going to be excellent.
Mm.
I will say he made just even a short video for us for the convention, and it was incredible. Like it was I think it was just a couple minutes long, and it was absolutely incredible. So I can say I'm really excited to see how full documentary show pans out, because just a 6-minute video or so was really inspirational and really spoke to our work beautifully.
I'll put a link to that in the chat.
Great.
Mm.
Okay. Casey, I'll ask you more about that later.
Yeah, we get approached by a lot of filmmakers at Braver Angels, even somewhat inundated by them. But Joseph, he seems to have a special gift for telling this kind of story. So it's exciting. Any other questions, either related to the programming that we've gone over, or just questions, thoughts, or concerns related to the moment we're coming up to with respect to the election? In America in general. One question I might have for you all is just what do you sense people are feeling in your own community at the moment, or even your own families? Some of us live in areas that are very kind of evenly split in a partisan direction, and maybe come from families that kind of have a lot of folks from one side of the aisle or the other. And other folks, many of us, and it's more and more the case these days in America, that we live in counties and communities that are very much sort of lopsided as far as the partisan dynamics go. And so, depending on where you are, you might be getting a different sort of vibe from some of the folks around you. But I do get the sense that there's a great deal of shared concern across the parties and across America. So I'd love to hear any feelings you guys have about sort of where your communities are at, and how that might be affecting you at the moment. Ted, I see you again. Jump in.
I live in a senior living facility here. There are about 2,300 people here. And one of the things they talk about, it has both a religious context that was developed years ago in Lancaster, Mennonite, I believe. And they say you don't talk politics here. And the reason you don't talk politics is because we're going to be living with the people that we're going to die with. I hate to put it that way, but when it comes right down to it. and you want to keep friendships, and you know, if you talk politics with the wrong people, that can become very distressing. And so I think people are afraid to talk about the important issues that we need to talk about. So that's just in response to your question, that's a microcosm of what I'm dealing with here, and that is, how much do you bring the Beaver Angels concepts and ideas into this kind of a community? And I'm going to say, where I am in Willow Valley, it's not the only one. This is a highly, this whole area, I'm told, has it's one of the, I think, better senior living kind of facilities, and they have many of them. And I think that's a concern that I have. How do we talk? How do we raise the subject to talk to people that we want to be friends with, but we're at odds. We know that we have different parties.
That's a pretty profound report, Ted. And I suppose it's par for the course. I mean, what you're describing is rather the story of our time to some considerable degree. We seem to live in a moment where there are vitally important things for us to talk about that so many of us are afraid to discuss. And then, you know, too many of us, or at least so many of us who do choose to discuss these things, aren't really discussing them so much as we are sort of talking at people, sort of beating people down with our arguments, as opposed to inviting the conversations that can lead to trust and a deeper understanding. So it's sad to hear that, Ted, but just the context of, you know, that being the dynamic in a retirement community where these are the folks who you are spending the duration with. There's just something poignant about that. Thank you for that. Karen, by all means, weigh in.
Hi, everyone. It's really good to be here. Yeah, I know there was an organizer meeting that was in competition with this, with your gig tonight.
Is that so? I hope that we didn't. I hope that we didn't.
I thought I saw that.
Things up with the wire crossing here. That happens now and again. Yeah.
It may have been something in person, but
scheduling is hard at Brave Angels. Let me tell you.
Yeah, but I have 2 points I want to make, and one of them is that I'm in rural Virginia. Parts of Virginia were affected by the hurricane, but mostly my neighbors in North Carolina were affected, and I know many people. And one thing that struck me as I sat in meditation last night was no one's saying, I'm not going to help him. He votes Republican. He likes Kamala Harris. You know, people aren't saying that. You know, the people want to help one another in this situation. And so that was just like a little bell of mindfulness for me about what's at the heart of both Braver Angels and what's in most of our hearts. You know, I live in a rural county that is very deeply divided, and yet I think that we interact beautifully with one another in some ways because we support the same nonprofits, we shop in the same stores, we support the same small businesses. You know, so I think we really have those things going for us. But so that's the end of rant number one. Number two, I'm probably the newest angel on the call. The convention was my first, and I'm pretty far away from I'm pretty far from my nearest alliance, which is in the Richmond, Virginia area. But tonight I had an opportunity to present to the Coming to the Table group in my local area. And it was a Zoom call, but so we have members that are from Arizona and someone from New York. And so I got to talk, I was part of the Braver Lens exhibit at the convention with Mark and Roman Williams. And got a grant from Braver Angels to do a local project of a diverse small group of people. And so that was like really hopeful. And that's just like some small thing that I can do as a member talk to like-minded organizations, and there's like so much intersectionality between coming to the table, particularly, and Braver Angels, and the sense that I got from the 6 of us that were present tonight was that people are really worried.
Yeah.
In my mind, there wasn't any clear winner of the debate. I thought we were all winners because it wasn't so contentious as what we've seen recently. So thanks for listening, everyone. And I'm glad I could be here with y'all tonight.
Well, we are very glad to have you, Karen. Thank you for those inspiring reflections. And thank you for the good work that you do. And I do think that you're right. I think that the generous heart of your neighbors out there in, did you say rural Virginia? I do think that the heart of your neighbors, and it comes through in moments of natural disasters and so forth. But I do think that spirit of caring and generosity that animates Brave Angels consciously is also just the authentic heart of the American people. I really do believe that. I think that we experience, many of us, a bit of a maybe you could say a cognitive dissonance in a sense, because for those of us who find ourselves so deeply impacted by the polarizing narratives, we sometimes have to reconcile this reality where you have a neighbor, a family member, a classmate who is a good person, and yet they reflect the politics of the side that you're being told is evil, right? And so many of us are left in the position of trying to figure out, well, how could these two things be, right? And it can lead to a great deal of cynicism and confusion. But hopefully we're in a position to shine a bit of light. Michael Abramson, please join the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. So it's related to a previous comment, a few previous comments. It's understandable that people can be reluctant to discuss politics in some settings because politics became synonymous with partisan politics. This partisan rancor and all these related issues. But what I think what is going on now, and not only in Braver Angels, but in our country, that a different kind of politics is brewing gradually. Non-partisan politics, or beyond partisan politics. And what I can give you the examples. For instance, there is an organization, Fix Us or Fix US, I don't know, that is collecting all these different proposals for political reform that were tried at different states, and they provided data, how it worked. And this is available for everyone, and it's available for commenting for everyone. And there are other efforts in this direction, and the books are written about this, one book after another, which are discussing these non-partisan ideas. And in my experience, almost every time when we have some Braver Angels events or events maybe organized by other similar groups like Crossing Party Lines, for instance, and so on, with explicit goal to find common ground, we almost always succeed in finding common ground. But then it goes nowhere. So it kind of remains confined to this event. And so I'm thinking that maybe we could more actively engage with other organizations and think tanks and groups and individuals that really try to find common ground in politics that synthesized the best ideas from different parties and redefine what politics mean really. That politics does not mean that we have to get enemies because we disagree on some issues. Politics means that we can discuss these issues and try to find something that we all can agree.
Right.
I was thinking a while about this, and it looks like we are going a little bit in this direction. For instance, we had this project about election integrity that was probably pretty successful.
The Trustworthy Elections Initiative?
Yes, trustworthy elections, right. And my understanding is that we are going to take on immigration issues next year.
This is correct. I think you all probably are aware, but for anybody who's not aware, we had an initiative that spanned the greater part of 3 years that ultimately saw the involvement of about 200 or so evenly balanced red and blue Braver Angels and other grassroots leaders who came together from about, I think, 25 states through about 26 workshops to arrive at a place of consensus on various values and reform ideas, policy ideas related to immigration. To the reform of our electoral system. And we are now in the aftermath of the convention in Kenosha launching a similar effort aimed at immigration reform. So that's what Michael is referring to. Michael, we only have a couple minutes left, but do you want to
yes. So my point that maybe we can find a way to scale up these efforts working together with our various partners, doing something similar and going beyond our events and into major political discourse.
Yes, that is absolutely right, Michael. And for anybody who's not aware, and you mentioned Fix Us, they're a fine organization dedicated to straightforward sort of structural reform and building cross-partisan consensus on legislation. I think that they probably work more directly on policy with elected officials than we do. But Braver Angels has a network called Braver Network, bringing together organizations from across civil society, including advocacy groups, ministries, even small community businesses in certain cases, and more, to really commit to the type of politics that Michael is describing, not nonpartisan, but a cross-partisan politics that focuses more on our ability to build together rather than simply to defeat each other in straightforward political and cultural competition. I could say a lot more about it if we had some more time, but Lori, I want to fit you in really quick before we come to a close.
I thank you. This has been great. I just wanted to say that I think it's great that we're doing some stuff right before the election and for the election, but I think these weeks leading up to that are very important. Whatever we're doing in our organizations, that we're talking about, how people are feeling, if they need support with anything. We do a weekly lunch chat every Wednesday. And today we talked about, I just at the beginning kind of took everyone's temperature and asked them on a scale from 0 to 10, where are you at with hope for what's moving ahead with the country? And we have reds and blues on there that are discussing things. And, that's a big focus for everyone right now. But I think whatever we're doing in our individual organizations, if we can really be doing everything we can over the next few weeks to try and help people feel less polarized and less fear, I think that that's really important. Not just right at the election or even the day after. Of course, those are important things, but I think just really trying to keep the temperature as low as possible over the next few weeks.
Absolutely. Can I jump in here? Because Laura, you just set me up so perfectly. We actually have an event this weekend called Navigating Fear and Anger with the upcoming election. So that's been part of our strategy. You're totally right on that. We have to give people the tools, not just on election or after the election, but leading up to the election. So we can put a link. I'll put it in the chat here. navigating fear and anger. I'll shorten it, but that's just to get it down quickly. So please join us this weekend to really, it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be with Louise Mojica, who's a somatic therapist. And so the magic of Louise is that he doesn't just go into the mind, he goes into the body, and how we can actually, when our heart rate goes up, when our stomach turns into a knot, when we're in those moments of fear, anger, stress, all of that, where do we go from there? So with Braver Angels, we do a lot of cognitive skills. We do a lot of, talking skills, but this is all about the body. So definitely join us for that. It'll apply to the election. I'm sure it'll apply to relationships in your life and beyond. So thank you, Lori. Lori was not paid to say that, but I do thank you for saying that, because he gave me an opportunity to plug that.
Lori wishes she was paid to say that.
We'll revisit the budget. Thank you so much, Lori. I appreciate that, and Gabbi, I appreciate you bringing this weekend up as well. Gabbi, is there anything else you want to say by way of closing thoughts or calls to action here at the end?
I'll quickly answer Vanessa's question and say yes, it will be on YouTube. So if you can't make it live, definitely check that out after. But also just thank you all for being here. It's such a joy to be with other members of Braver Angels. We could talk about anything, but I'm just glad to see you all. So thank you for being on tonight.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I can only second that. It is greatly encouraging to be in this movement, in this work with each of you, and with a few of you for a good many years now at this point. And it's worth realizing that as chaotic as things are, and as much as Braver Angels has grown and diversified in what we do over the years, I still look at us as being towards the beginning of seeing what this great enterprise may become. And so when that story is written, each of you will have been a part of it. And so, but until we meet again, let's go out and, as I'm given to say, let's build a house united. Until the next time. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. See you election week and before.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
There you go.